Welcome to College Admissions Toolbox, giving you the edge you need to get into the colleges of your dreams. With your host, Steve Schwartz. That's me. Today we're talking everyone with Kim Lifton. Kim is the president and co-founder of the WOW Writing Workshops, and she helps students with their college essays. Kim, tell us a little bit about how you got into this.
I am a journalist. And I used to be that journalist down the street next door on the phone who would be called to help all my friends' kids. So one day I was sitting with one of my friend's kids, and I noticed that her essay for the University of Michigan was written all about scuba diving. The whole thing was about, I went scuba diving and I want to go to the University of Michigan. And I read it, and I didn't know a lot about college admissions at the time. It was a really long time ago. But I looked at it and said, there's something wrong here. This is a personal statement. It has to be about yourself. And this light bulb went off, and I said I just realized at that time that the students who were coming to me for help really didn't get it. They didn't understand what they were supposed to do. And what I did with her back then, 10 years ago, we didn't have any system, no process, but I helped her go backward and think about what it was she wanted the colleges to know about her through this story. And I don't remember what it is today because it was a long time ago, but I do remember that she ended up writing something that was more reflective. And I started thinking about it, and I was talking to her dad, and I said, wow, you all are smart. Your daughter's smart. She's qualified for this school, but this story didn't show who she was. And you called me because I was the resident writer. And I just kind of looked at him and said, I wonder if I could do classes and teach multiple kids how to do this. So I had a friend named Susan Nappo, my current business partner, who wrote curriculum and was a poet and used to teach AP English. And I called her. I said, you think you could develop something so we could teach this like a real way? And she said yes. I tried to quit. She loved it. I mean, we just evolved from there. And I went from being the writer down the street to somebody who I just embraced the industry. My job was to go out and meet everybody in the college admissions world. I made it my beat. I'm a journalist. So I just kind of dove right into it and got to learn the admissions industry, went to conferences, joined the state organizations, made some friends, and Susan started working on a curriculum, and then we incorporated my journalistic skills with her creative writing expertise, and we came up with an actual process that's completely directed at this task, which is what's so cool. It works. And it's my journalistic skills and Susan's creative writing teaching ability that created our 10-step program. And it's really great. And, I'd love to show it to you, but it's focused on content, not structure. We take them through 3 phases: content, structure, polish. And then,
wow, that's great. So it sounds like you guys really kind of, merge the 2 skill sets that you have together. Could you maybe walk us through it, maybe like with an actual student, an example of a student you've worked with, how the step-by-step process that you took this student from beginning to end. Is there anyone who comes to mind?
Oh my God, we've had thousands of students. I guess I could pick the most recent one. How's that?
Sure. Okay. That works.
We'll call him Will. Oh, this is perfect, Steve. See, you're perfect. Will came to me with an essay he had written in English class. And the story was about going to visit his grandmother in the hospital. The story was about his personal relationship and how he developed a relationship with grandma. It was beautiful. He got an A. But it was all about visiting grandma, and it didn't talk about what was important about that and what he had learned. So we took Will back. We said, put the paper aside and let's start over. I'm not telling you can't use that story, because I never tell a student he or she can't use a story. But I said, let's talk about this and what it means. This is a good start for a high school paper, but it's not done. So what he thought was his final draft was probably draft 1. And this happens all the time when we get stuff from the high school teachers because they don't complete the process, but it's okay. It's not bad. So I took him back. And what we do first with our students is we ask them one question, which is, what do you want the college to know about you in your application package? What do you want them to know after they're done reading everything? Beyond grades, beyond test scores, beyond anything. And you need to know this and be able to answer it before you're actually ready to apply to college. Most kids, a lot of kids look at you with these big, huge eyes and say, what? I don't know. And then I say, okay, let's help you. This is a point where parents can help the kids. This is a point where a mentor can help a kid. This is a point where a kid down the street can help, because it's really important that students understand who they are before they start trying to tell colleges a story. And they're 17, they're 16. They don't do a lot of reflection. And why would they? They're kids. They're thinking about their future. So what we do in the beginning is we try to take them to that place so that they'll be able to move forward and tell their stories. So that's what we did with Will. Will, what is it that you want them to know about you? And he had to think it about a lot. At this point I stopped working with him. I told him to go home and talk to his mother or his father or his brother and really talk about it. Ask them what they think about him. And you think characteristics, not accomplishments, not failures, not all the buzzwords that you see in the admissions world. Just what are your traits? What are your characteristics? He came up with several. They were all good. And every one of Will's traits was a trait that a college would like about him because it showed who he was. And he's in the middle of the process right now, today he owes me a first draft. So this is pretty current. But the work he did before getting to that first draft was so good that his first draft will probably it'll probably still come in with a lot of what happened. And then our process takes them through the reflection so that they can answer the question, why does it matter? So we have 2 questions that we tell them they need. The experience, what happened? The person you admired, what happened with this person? How does that person influence you? So the story doesn't matter. The subject is you, the student. The story is what they focus on, and they need to focus on the subject, which is the student. So that's how our process starts. And then we take them through this. It's 5 steps. They're all content building. They're revision. They're clarifying a theme. And then by step 5, they go home and they write their first draft. And we come back and we go through reviews. We don't mark up the reviews until the end.
Kim, before we get into any of the other steps, I'm wondering about the process of engaging with parents, teachers, siblings, people who know you personally. I know sometimes, for students out there, it can be hard to, you go to a parent, you go to someone you trust and respect,
Mm-hmm.
you ask them for their advice on this. If you don't agree with that advice, it's sometimes hard to say no to them, right?
You've seen that, right, Steve?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's something I see a lot. And so I'm wondering, are there any, worst moments you've seen related to that, and kind of how do you help students to kind of navigate that struggle given the differences of opinion among all the multiple parties you might want to get feedback from and input from?
We tell the students to be careful where they get help. We also embrace parents because we're parents. We have kids, and we feel very strongly that there's a strong role for the parent to play. That's not to say they don't overstep. So I do parent phone calls where we talk about how to help your child without overstepping, without taking it over. And it's hard. Will's mom is my friend. And I told her I will work with out of it. I wouldn't say that to just any parent. What we do is we tell the parents in the very beginning, this is a place where you can help your child. If your kid is smart, they're all smart, but as a parent, we look at them, we say, your child has a lot of great traits, And this is a place where you can help them figure out what that is. Mom and dad can help Junior to figure out what that trait is. And we embrace them early and bring them in. And then we send them notes and we keep them updated as the kids are working. And we tell the students, you can show them your work, but you don't have to. And because sometimes as parents, we want to get too involved in the kids' work. And we try to just tell the parents that we can tell when parents write kids' essays. Back in the day when we used to meet students at coffee shops, and we don't meet in person, we do everything online now. But I met a student at a coffee shop, and I had already seen some of we have what we call voice activities that we have the kids do in the beginning. And if I see something a child wrote, even one piece of writing, I can always tell if somebody has changed it and put other words in it. And Steve, I'm sure you know this. If a parent does something to the essay, it's generally just little pieces in it, so you can see the difference in the writing styles throughout it.
Oh yeah, you totally see a difference in the flow. There's certain kinds of language that a student will use and certain kinds of language that a parent will use.
Right.
And if it's not consistent, it'll stand out.
It's pretty easy to tell. Parents don't think it is, but it is.
Which means that admission officers can also tell,
well,
right?
That's what I'll get to that because I talked to them about it. But this student, I had already seen a few drafts, and he came to meet me and he was all proud. He goes, okay, I'm done. This is great. Would you look at it? And I looked at it. I said, can I see your version of this? And he said, this is mine. I said, come on. I've seen your writing. Well, mine isn't that good. He goes, okay, my dad did it. And I said, tell your dad to stay out of it. And I said, so I actually, I had him rewrite it right there, and it was beautiful. He goes, I don't like it. My writing isn't good. I said, your writing's beautiful. This kid got into his stretch school. They wouldn't have noticed it. What happens when adults get too involved in the kid's writing is there's no voice. It's sanitized. And whether it hurts or not, I can't really tell you, but I can say that if an admissions officer they're looking to admit you, they want to like you. And if you, student A, write this story that's sanitized, it doesn't help them to know who you are. It doesn't help you at all. In every essay, as you know, Steve, it's an opportunity to stand out, to give them something extra. And anytime they ask you to write something, write it and do it yourself. It's a really important message.
Kim, what's like the worst essay you've seen, committing that crime of being overly sanitized, maybe due to a parent's involvement? I'm sure you've seen some real doozies, right?
But I think the worst is that this kid came to me with 5 paragraphs and 3 of them were written by someone else. That's about as bad as it gets. If a student writes something that doesn't appear to be right, I don't look at it as bad. I look at it as something, it's a starting point and we can move them to the next step. So I was asked this last night when I was speaking to a group of parents about grammar. They were asking about, is grammar more important than the story? And I said, because of the way we work with our students, because of the places where they start with content and then move to structure, never seen a problem with major grammar issues or syntax or usage. Generally, when you start with content, everything else moves to the place it needs to be. And we work with them. If we see a bunch of spelling errors along the way, we point it out in a different document. And we give them a few examples and say, go back in and look for these patterns. We don't fix it. And I really think that the way we do it, and we have the students own it and look for the errors and fix the errors. And then in the end, it's pretty good, written in the student's voice. And I've never seen these stories people talk about, the admissions officers talk about how everything starts to sound the same. I've never seen 2 stories that sound the same because every student has a strong voice and no one can take that away. And if you follow a process, if you follow when we work with our kids and they follow our process, their stories emerge and they're just gorgeous. They're just beautiful. And I love it when I see that story emerge. I'm sure you do too. It feels so great. I mean, personally, when any of our coaches work with these kids and, they'll have one that just is so spectacular, and we just get so excited every single time. And the students who come to us and say they can't write, sometimes we get the best stuff because, Steve, if the kid is applying to Harvard, there's going to be a different kind of a story. But the personal statement, and we tell them all this, the personal statement, the Common App, the UC-Berkeley, the Applied Texas, the statement, it's really not, it's not an academic assignment. It's a way for them to know you so they can see, can you write? Will you fit in? Do we want to know more about you? You're going to like it here? So it's a way for them to know you. It replaces that interview. And they read them. Now, you asked me something about the admissions officers, if they can tell. Yes, of course they can. And every time I go to the national conferences, and I'll ask like 20 admissions officers, can you tell? And they'll all give me little cues as to how they can tell. And a lot of times they say, we just know it, because my voice of a 50 plus some woman, see, I've just given that away, is so different probably from your voice in your 20s from someone who's in high school. There's a huge difference in the 16, 17-year-old writing and the college kid. And you can see the evolution.
Yeah, no, for sure. By the way, just to correct the record, I know I look a little bit young and we're doing this over a video chat, but I'm actually 30. Recently turned 30.
Right.
Not quite in my 20s anymore, but I've made it to the big 3-0. But yeah, absolutely. There's a huge difference in how a teenager writes versus a 20 or 30 something versus someone who's, 50 something. And, life experience affects writing style.
Right.
And everyone can tell. And it is so rewarding when you see someone have that strong voice emerge in the essay and really let that personality shine through. So it's like, wow, I've never met this person before. They might be halfway around the world or halfway across the country.
Right.
But, obviously, GPA and standardized test scores are just numbers. There's nothing human about that, really. The list of activities is, practically out in, drop-down forms. That's not too human either. But then the essay, in just 650 words or less, you can communicate so much. And I'm really wondering, Kim, could you take us to the moment in time of a specific student you've worked with where, maybe at first they felt like they didn't really have the ability to show who they were in the written word, but then you kind of took them step by step to that light bulb moment where they were able to have that strong voice emerge in the end to get the admission officers to really like them and know them?
I do. This is good. I have another story about recognizing. If you hold on to it and ask me again, and I'll tell you about the voice and how they know.
Sure.
Okay. All right. This was one of my earliest. It still stands out, this story. I was working with I love these kids, with a student who had written essays and sent them in for review. I think there were 3 or 4 of them. It was for the University of Michigan. I remember this. And I looked at them all. I read them all before we even started with the process. And I noticed a theme. This student she was not in the essays. They were all about things. They were all about the what. There were little moments in there. And I noticed that she kept quoting Dr. Seuss. And at the time, one of the questions was about a book. Was there a book that influenced you? I don't think it's on there anymore, but somewhere in the world of applications, somebody might be writing about a book. And even if you write about a book, it has to be about you. So I noticed this, and her parents, this answers all your questions. This girl's parents, her father was so involved. It was really hard. And I remember whatever she wanted to write, he just poo-pooed it, told her to write about this, to write about that. And so I believe to this day that what was missing was this kid's ability to do it, on her own, because everything was sanitized and there was no voice. So the mom called me because she said, there's something missing. My daughter, Hillary, she's missing. So that was good. And she asked me to work with her. After I read them, I sat, and, I asked Hillary, I said, hey, Hillary, tell me about Dr. Seuss. Kind of took one step, forward. I just said, tell me about it. You quote him a lot. She goes, love Dr. Seuss. And I remember for my bat mitzvah, I got this book. And it was all the places we go. And she started talking about this book and that book and all these Dr. Seuss books. And, I said, do you bring the books with you? And, she probably carried one in her backpack. I mean, there was so much about Dr. Seuss. So then I asked her the standard question, which we've always asked this. And I have to tell you, and I'm before the Common App, put it on the Common App, we always ask, what do you want them to know about you? I still believe, Steve, that I told the guys when they were writing it, I said, the only question you need to ask is, what do you want us to know about you beyond your grades, test scores, and other things? And there it came up the question they need to ask is on the Common App. And if all the kids would read the Common App and see that, it would be a lot easier. Meanwhile, I asked Hillary this question and we started talking about what she wanted them to know. And she wanted them to know that she really liked to read and to learn, and that she was she was inspired by quotes in this book, and she was just, she really wanted to learn and she loved learning. That was Hillary's thing. And so she first wrote about a book that was geared toward kids who had body image issues. And I also asked her why she chose that book, and she said that she chose the book because her mother told her to. This was not a child who had body image issues. She was completely okay with herself. She didn't look in the mirror and see anything but a beautiful, smart girl. And so she changed it and wrote about all the places we'll go because it inspired her, because she thought a lot, was a deep, deep thinker. And I can't remember what the story was today because it was a long, long, long time ago. But I always remember that her story was about how this book changed the way she thought. And it had nothing to do with the book her mother told her to write about with a body image. So there's two lessons here. One is be true to yourself and be confident that you're going to have whatever your idea is. It's okay. Whatever these kids want to write about, it's okay. We can brainstorm and we can find something in there. You have an injury, you're off the team, you missed the winning goal, whatever it is. If that's what the kids tell us they want to write about, we just start there. You don't tell them no. So we help build confidence. We always say we're part social worker, part writing teacher. We hear a lot, Steve. We hear a lot of stories. And it's great. I mean, this helps the student. I mean, I hope we started this to help kids master a task because there was a need, and there is a need. But now that we've been doing it for a while, we look at it as if these students applying to college today can look at this as a gift, as an opportunity, because what they're learning is they're learning how to express themselves, how to communicate. They're learning who they are, and they're young. So it'll help them to move forward and figure out what they want to do with the rest of their lives when it's time to actually do that. And I find that they get excited, and the kids, Hillary loves to write now. She was always a good writer. She didn't feel confident. And something happened in that moment where she felt confident. And I do remember that she went back to school and wrote a paper, and the teacher called the mom and accused her of plagiarism because she said her writing was so much better. And I don't really know how to say that so it doesn't sound bad, because she wrote her paper on her own, but she learned something about herself, and she was so much more confident as a writer. She was always a good writer, but she didn't feel confident. So she used more details, and she just did a better job. And I took it as a compliment because she learned something so significant in that moment when we were talking about Dr. Seuss. So I think somewhere in there, that's the answer to your question.
Oh no, that is wonderful. So many powerful nuggets there, Kim. I don't even know where to begin. I mean, definitely, recognizing, the quotes, the Dr. Seuss quotes, that idea, kept coming up. Maybe the body image topic is not what you're really passionate about, not what someone else is telling you to do. And that comes across in your writing. If you don't really care that much about your topic because someone else just gave it to you, right, it's not going to come across to the same extent as when you've chosen your topic. The details, the level of clarity, the imagery will really shine through. They'll see that strong voice inside you, and they'll want you at their school because they're going to like you.
Oh my God. And the admissions officer, they knew someone in admissions, said this is like the best.
Oh yeah, there you go.
So, I think the moral of the story is like trust your gut. And if she had wanted to write about that other book, it would have been okay if there were a story about her and something she learned. But there wasn't.
Because it's not about the book, it's about you.
Right.
At the end of the day.
Well, you and I know that.
Yeah.
So that's challenging, is teaching them that it's hard for students to put themselves in the writing. They haven't had a lot of it. And in school, and you went to school, we all went to school. When I went to school, we didn't have all this structure. I don't remember it this way. But today, teachers teach writing completely different from the way we do. We focus on content. We believe, and it works for anything, that whatever you're writing, if you get your content first, if you're, as a journalist, you get your story, right? Put it together later, figure out the structure and the editing when you're done. You actually put your lead on it when you're done, but you get your story first. With this, the story's in your head. So there's no research. There's no way the English teacher who will teach you how to do research at the library or what have you can teach you how to pull something out of your brain. It's a different kind of skill. But if you can do it this way.
Kim, I'm sorry. We'll be able to edit this out, but actually you got cut off there a little bit, maybe due to a shaky internet connection. Okay. The last thing you said was, and in school. We were talking about the idea of, the strong voice and all that. We had just unpacked this girl's story. Okay.
I'll edit it then and start over. In the classroom, students are taught to follow a structure. They're shown examples, they're given a subject, and they're told how it should look in the end. They're given an introduction, support paragraphs, and a conclusion. And that's how they're taught to write. So what we're asking them to do, and what anybody should be asking them to do for this, that doesn't work for the college essay. It never does. Admissions officers will say, maybe sometimes they say negative things about that. I love English teachers, and they're teaching what they're teaching. It's all fine, but this is different. And so what we tell them is that there's no structure to this. And a lot of times the kids write that way. I'm sure you see it, where they have an introduction and then they have a conclusion. And you don't need that. That's wasted words.
Yeah, of course. That's not going to work in such a short jam-packed essay.
But that's why this is hard for them, because we're taking them away. And my daughter had a tutor. She has dyslexia, and she had a tutor who was teaching her how to use technology and all this stuff. And she's amazing. She writes curriculum for the Gates Foundation. And we were talking about training her to work with some of the kids with learning disabilities to use our system. And she said to me, I still remember this, she said, "It's really cool what you do, Kim. You teach it backward. It's a whole different way of looking at it." And I thought, whoa, you talk about light bulb moment. No, we don't teach it backward. We teach it the way it's supposed to be taught. I'm sure it's how you do it. You start with the contents, and then you move them through the structure. And it emerges, the stories emerge as you go through the revision process. Revision doesn't mean having your friend mark it up and showing you where you need a semicolon. Revision is content. And the structure is the very last thing, the polish.
Of course, the content's the most important thing. Let that dictate everything else, right?
Right. If I notice a kid has to capitalize letters, I tell them. But somebody asked last night at this parent meeting, one of the parents said, "Well, what do you do if the grammar is all horrible or what?" And I said, "Well, it's usually usage." I did say that. That's really rude. But I said, it hasn't been a problem. And we have kids with learning disabilities, and we have all these kids. But when they write in their own voice, when they write the way they talk, if they write in short sentences, then that's how they write. It's not such a big deal, of course. That's just not what this is about.
As long as you meet a certain standard, it's not the most important thing to be worrying about. And nobody's super impressed by a semicolon. Don't throw it in if it doesn't fit, right?
You're right. It's not about that. It's about the story. And what I'm saying is I think these students, by the time they get to this level, they have a basic understanding of punctuation. So it hasn't been a huge problem. And when it is a problem, it's usually because there's a learning disability. And then we work with the person we need to so that the student can do it properly.
Yeah, 100%.
So it just hasn't been an issue.
Yeah.
Anyway, if you want me to tell you the other story.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
I love this. My daughter will kill me. But I have a 17-year-old who is applying to college right now. And I'm going through it for the first time with her. And my poor child, I spent a lot of time talking to her about what she wants them to know. And I think she's done with me, Steve. But it's been really fabulous being able to just talk to her about this and to see the evolution in my own child. And we'll see how it goes. I think Susan will be her writing coach, but it's kind of interesting. But when Sarah was 14, we used to speak a lot into the Detroit area because this is where we are. And I would have these groups of kids and parents, and I would always try to explain to them why they shouldn't be writing or telling their students, their kids, what words to use. And my example was that I'm a ghostwriter. I write, my background was a journalist, and I would write for professionals who wanted to get published. I wrote their blogs, I wrote their chapters to books, whatever. And because I know how to write in someone else's voice, I'm the only one in the room here who can actually do it. And I used to say that. And it was funny. They all laughed. And then one day Sarah was with me at this presentation, and we got home and she had a little assignment to do for English class. And it was really short. She had to write like 75 words about something, describing something. So I said to her, hey, you go write it, and then I'm going to write a version as if I were you. I want to see if I can do this. Oh my God. It was horrible. I sounded like a grown woman trying to sound like a teenager. I didn't know what words to use. It was so different. And I have to tell you, the next time I spoke, I shared the story and said, I can't write in your kid's voice, and I'm a professional ghostwriter, so why would you even bother? And it was so apparent. And so that's my story, is that if I can't do that and I'm a professional, why would you? And we don't even try. Like, why would I suggest a word choice to a student? I don't know what word that kid uses. So we don't. And their words are good enough.
No, of course. I mean, you can't be somebody else, and you can't really get inside someone else's head to that extent. I've talked with screenwriters, I've talked with like TV producers, and it's the funniest thing. The amount of research they do, you've got to do such in-depth interviews for days and weeks and months to really learn these people's lives. Even someone like yourself or myself who, works with teenagers all the time, you still can't quite do it with that 100% authenticity. Only the student themselves can really communicate who they are. I mean, it is, another word for the college essay is the personal statement, right?
Yeah. I want to caution students to avoid gimmicks. This isn't a screenwriting experience. And I've heard people tell them that they should look at it like it's a screenplay, or look at it like, or you have to talk into a mic, you have to tell your story into a camera, or there are so many ways that you can do this, and whatever way works for you. If we have a student with a disability, it might be easier for that kid to talk into a microphone. And some kids it's easier to write it, whatever works for whatever kid. But they should avoid anything that sounds gimmicky. And I think that's really important because, if you start thinking it's like a movie trailer, the movie trailer doesn't tell you a whole story. It introduces something, and it doesn't focus on why. So there's a lot of messages out there that I feel confuse children. And we are actually going to be presenting at the National Association of College Admissions. I'm going to be moderating a panel with the University of California, Berkeley admissions director, Amy Jarich, and the director of admissions from Cornell, Sean Felton. And that's our subject. It's that the messages are confusing to the students, and how do we, as adults, grown-up adults, get that message that the college explain simply and clearly to the students what the colleges want so that they're not confused. Think about the words in college admissions. Passion, leadership. What else do they use? Passion, leadership, initiative. Steve, where are the followers supposed to go to college? If they
of course. I mean, not everybody's a leader. You can't pretend, some people are more introverted and play a different role.
But it confuses the students. So that's why we tell them avoid gimmicks, and we're going to we're speaking to a group of high school counselors, a mixed group of counselors, independent consultants, and hoping that there'll be some college admissions people. And it's about the messaging, because I'm sure you see that kids come to you and they think they need to write about something really big and show passion. Passion can be like picking up dog poop. I mean, we use silly examples so that they don't copy them, but passion is what they're not looking for, something huge. You don't have to want to go to Pluto. You don't have to go build an orphanage like Mother Teresa. You don't have to be the captain of whatever team you're on. You don't even have to be on a team. If all you do in 4 years of high school is get good grades and do well on your tests, and every day after school you babysit your little brother so mom and dad can work harder because you're having money, whatever it is, what have you learned from that experience with your little brother? You don't think they'll like that kid? Of course they will, because they want the kids to be true to themselves. And they don't need to do things to build resumes to make themselves into different people, because it shows. They don't come off as authentic. And that's really, so we say at this point, what is it? Tomorrow's August 1st. The Common App comes out, and you can't use that because this won't come out tomorrow. But in the summer, when they start writing, as they get closer to their senior year, there's not a whole lot these kids can do at this point. You can't improve your grades from junior year, which is the most important. You can't start planning to take a bunch of different classes from when you were a freshman. And the odds are that if you got a 29 on your ACT 4 times, it's going to stay there. So accept it, accept your fate, and focus your energy on what you can do. And you can really, just hit this thing out of the ballpark with a story about yourself that's genuine and shows reflection that you do yourself.
No, absolutely, Kim. I mean, definitely, you got to focus on what you can control. And standardized tests, you can only improve so much. If you score the same thing so many times on that exam, maybe focus on something else where you really can get a little more bang for your buck in terms of time invested, money spent, whatever. But the amount of effort you put into your college essay will really generate big returns. So definitely a really valuable lesson there, Kim. Thanks so much for sharing that. Totally. Well, Kim, this was awesome. You gave so many valuable tips, tons of awesome, actionable advice to help students out there writing their college essays and helping parents kind of, reduce the stress level a little bit and let the students take charge on this. So really appreciate all your insights and advice there. We'll link to the website, wowwritingworkshops.com, in the show notes, where you can find all the great resources that you've put together, right?
And we'll be putting more.
Thanks for listening to College Admissions Toolbox. Head over to www.collegeadmissionstoolbox.com to get more free tools and resources that will help you get into the colleges of your dreams. I started listening to podcasts and audiobooks because I felt like I didn't have enough time to sit down and read everything on my list. Since then, I've managed to quote-unquote read dozens of books just by listening to them while I'm doing other stuff. One audiobook I absolutely love is The Gatekeepers. It's by a reporter who followed an admission officer at Wesleyan for almost a full year. In The Gatekeepers, he shares everything he learned on the inside. Just go to collegeadmissionstoolbox.com/audiobook and you'll be able to choose any free audiobook you'd like.